Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our channel, Paws On Animation.
And this time we're covering the live action version of Beauty and the Beast. Oh no.
Back when Disney was still beginning their live action versions of classic films and they haven't had sense enough to stop, this movie takes the growing love story between Belle and the Beast and does everything the opposite of the animated film.
Yeah!
But
before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and occasionally like the future podcasts and want to pause videos.
Yes, thank you for joining us today, subscribing to our channels, sharing our videos, and so much more. Really appreciate you.
Yes.
Oh, where do we start with this? For those of you who are not familiar with this movie,
somehow
it was made in 2017 and it's called a musical romantic fantasy film, but it's anything but.
Yeah, pretty much.
The screenplay was by Steven Chbosky and it was produced by Disney and Manville Films, so maybe that affected it.
Maybe.
And it's a remake of the 91 animated movie.
Yeah, there's not a lot we can really say about even the backstory of this.
It was released in theaters in the U.S. in March of that year, 2017. It had a budget between $160 and $255 million, I think.
Seriously?
This was 2019, and they spent this much, they claim, on a live-action movie. And they claimed it had a return of $1.26 billion.
What?
I think this is what spurs them on for making remakes now.
Yeah.
Because of the return on this movie. But
yeah.
I think so many people just wanted to see it because it was something they hadn't done before.
Right.
And I think they got the kind of money they got again because it hadn't been done before.
Right.
But my last question is, why in the heck would they spend anywhere from 160 to 255 million on live action when this is what they spend on animated movies now?
Right. It's almost the same amount. And we thought they had this movie on demand. Turns out it wasn't. It was an error. We found this actually at the library of all places, and I told Ma it was a tragedy. She said, oh, well, maybe this is one of the rare ones where it's actually good. Like, we personally like the live-action Aladdin. And so far, that's one of the very few remakes we actually do like.
Sure.
And I told you, Ma, it's not good. They changed stuff. They're trying to make it look realistic and everything. Oh, maybe it's not as bad as it sounds.
And I defended the movie and Emma Watson because I like Emma Watson. And I'm like,
and then we put it in the movie.
Let's watch it ourselves. And let's see.
Yeah, we put it in the movie, and then when they started with Beast's backstory, she said, what is this? When they had the avant-garde, exaggerated things with their outfits, and the makeup is how rich and posh and I guess jerkish they are, and it's like, here we go. Instead of the simple glass painting telling the story, we had to show what's wrong with them being rich. Oh my gosh. It's just...
Well, it worked for them again because, as you mentioned, it was the first one.
Right.
And it's the second highest grossing live action adaptation they have to date.
Yeah.
They got nominations for Best Production Design, Best Costume Design at the 90th Academy Awards. And I can see why in terms of how they stuck to the time period. And it was elaborate.
Yeah.
I will give it that.
Yeah.
I can understand why I got nominated. But some of it was just so trashy looking in terms of the makeup and stuff. And yes, people, I've seen the pictures, but they don't look trashy. Now, that's how I see it. Let us know what you think in the comments. So, as you said, I just could not believe how bad this movie was. I really wanted to love it. I really wanted to be good. I really wanted to be able to tell the naysayers, you were wrong! You were wrong! But now I'm saying you were right. There were so many things wrong with this movie. I guess
if we had to, we could. If we had to list them all, it'd be here over an hour.
So the first thing we'll go with is, as you mentioned, there were so many changes from the original. One is in how Belle acts as a person. What you liked about Belle is that in terms of other Disney characters and how they design princesses and even anime, you can say for the women, she was plain, but she had this wonderful personality and presence. She was positive about everything. She truly loved her dad. She truly wanted to be kind. She loved to read. And when Gaston was a jerk, she wasn't a jerk back. And you like that she maintained her composure. And even though he didn't really earn the respect of being treated with respect,
right,
she did it. And you love that. And you get to this movie and all of a sudden this version
is very arrogant.
Belle is arrogant and just a bigger jerk as Gaston, and
like,
nasty and rude. And they give her a whole song where she's an A-double-S hole.
And it's supposed to be the one about, you know, the I Want song that Disney always have in the movies. It's the same song, but now the context is different and delivery is different. We started like skipping a little bit of it because I don't want to hear it. But I played a part of it because remember when she was all, you know, more fanciful in the animated movie about, you know, hoping for more and wanting better. And here she's angry and she's yelling. Like, instead of the Sound of Music parody, she's just yelling at the town and at Gaston. And it's like, why are you angry?
And who is this character? It's not Belle. And then we'll get, since we're speaking of Belle, we'll get to Emma Watson. For those of you who are listening, I love Emma Watson. I loved her in the Harry Potter franchise. I thought she was fantastic. And I thought because of that, she was going to give a grand performance. And the first thing I noticed is, except for 2 scenes, in one of the pictures we have in here, she doesn't smile. She smiled twice in the entire movie.
Yeah.
And it always looked like, forgive me, she smelled something. Because she was always, had a snarl, or a look like something was distasteful in her mouth. She looked unpleasant, like she was disgusted, like she hated where she lived. And it was like,
why?
This is Belle. Where's that la 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 presence and that optimism that you loved about her? It wasn't present in here. And then she was, I know everything. And then she, I'm better than you. And then she, how dare you attitude. And then she, I'm all woman, hear me roar.
Oh my
This wasn't Belle. This was another character they decided to create.
Right. And again, this is back when they were beginning this, and we had no idea that this was going to be the new trend of not only live action Disney movies, but also female-centric or female-led movies from Disney. This was 2017. Now we know this was the starting point pretty much for all the movies after, and it hasn't gotten better since.
And they have the audacity to describe her as bright and spirited.
Bright
Nothing
and
about
spirited.
her was bright but that dress she had on, that yellow dress when she danced with the Beast. There was nothing else bright about her.
No.
Nothing. And I was just so disappointed. And then we noticed something else. You can disagree and let us know in the comments. Her character, the way she performs, and her look and her presence has come to represent the type of women Disney chooses for not only live action, but in how they create the animated characters to be.
Unfortunately.
They're one-dimensional. They don't have any acting range. They don't smile. They have no presence. They are angry, as you said, about everything. And they all have the same look. If you don't believe us, go back and look at every live action movie that Disney has made, whether it's under Disney or Marvel, and look at the women. And then look at the characters that have been out since after Tangled. And look at the women, starting with Frozen and all the way through. They're all the same. And then they don't understand why so many Disney fans are not happy. You want that variety that you used to get in characters. I don't want to see all the same female character all the time in every
different
movie.
Places, yeah.
And I definitely don't want to see ones that are boorish and nasty and rude and arrogant and uppity. And I can just keep going with the synonyms. I don't want to keep doing it. But this was disappointing. And unfortunately, Belle was one of the biggest disappointments of this film.
Right. And speaking of all synonyms used for her, you get to Gaston. Now, granted, He pretty much is the same technically as the animated counterpart. He's still, because he already fit what they wanted to put, so they didn't have to change him much.
And Luke Evans did a great job because Luke Evans is hot. But you weren't thinking that anytime you were watching this movie,
right?
Because he did perform the role as a narcissistic and arrogant hunter fantastically.
Yeah.
How did he outshine the main character?
Exactly. Now for him, yeah, he stayed the same. They didn't try to make him sympathetic. He stayed the same. However, his little lackey LaFoe got a complete overhaul because they wanted him to be an icon.
Performed by Josh Gad.
And
Poorly,
he was one of 7 first gay characters in Disney. He went from being the bumbling old lackey that was like the fanboy of Gaston. Now he was almost as arrogant, if not more than Gaston. He stopped acting like a fool. He had his nose up in the air at women. He thought himself to be more attractive than a woman. And it was like, this is, again, as you mentioned about Belle, an entirely different character. And it's so much so that said, well, you're too good to be with Gaston. Oh, I know. Why are you lagging behind him?
His description is Gaston's flamboyant, illiterate, animal-loving, and long-suffering sidekick who bolsters his friend's ego but often disagrees with his decisions. It didn't look like he disagreed with anything.
No, it looked like he went along with everything this man said. Just like, only thing he didn't like was his attention towards the women. That's really it. The whole movie.
Now, 2 more of the main characters. Kevin Kline as Morris, Belle's dad. It wasn't Belle's dad. This was a whole different character from the animated version.
He was lifeless too. I mean, don't dislike Kevin Kline. This version of her father was more like Geppetto than the inventor that he was in the original. And they had him more like I guess they want him to act like he was a klutz or naive or oblivious because of.
But that's what made him endearing because
now
she was the way she was, and you kind of could see where she got her optimism and personality from.
Yeah.
And it was like...
and he tried to run away from the castle. He had a lot more common sense. He was a lot more of a serious and tragic character and sympathetic for whatever reason rather than being a lovable character. Then you get to...
I guess that's why in this movie they matched.
Yeah.
Because they both... Exactly. Now let's get to, before we go to those other secondary characters, like the candelabra and the harpsichord and so far, and the people who played them. Let's get to Beast, portrayed by Dan Stevens.
Yeah.
Now I want you to know, I love Dan Stevens. I've loved him ever since Downton Abbey. I absolutely love him. And before this movie, I felt he couldn't do any wrong. He was a spoiled and arrogant prince, which he played very well. My problem was with Beast.
And I guess the problem would be that there was no chemistry. They wanted to say there was chemistry because of the old movie, but you didn't feel like that when he talked to Belle. Belle was kind of pissed with him too, and he didn't have any sort of fun keys to him. He was like a really bitter, disgruntled Beast, which yes, he was angry, but it was also he had no common sense mostly and manners and things. But in here it's like he was just like unhelpable.
And you could also see his growth in the animated film where he grew and became better the more he dealt with Belle. But in here you didn't see that. I'm sorry, there was no character growth. There was nothing different. They just forced the issue. And there was definitely no chemistry, and there was no freaking romance in this movie.
No, because she hated
him.
There is
nothing because, she had this attitude of, I don't need a man. Throughout the entire movie. They threw them together
until
at the end,
dance.
But you could tell that there was nothing. There was nothing between them in this movie. And I'm going to say it was on behalf of Emma Watson's performance, because you could see where Dan Stevens was trying and it just wasn't working. It was kind of like in real life where a guy likes a woman and his advances are not returned. That's what this felt like the entire movie.
Yeah.
That there was absolutely nothing going on.
Yeah.
It was so disappointing because you could feel it, the atmosphere of that in the animated movie. In this live action movie, it was nowhere to be found. And I think it was on purpose. I really believe that they did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the portion you wanted to.
Yes, and get to the rest of the furniture in the movie, all CGI, Lumiere and Cogsworth and the others. They had to make them look as realistic as possible, so much so is that when they hold still, you couldn't tell they were pretending to hold still. They looked like the same they did when they were moving. Mm-hmm. And I guess the performers were fine in terms of voice acting, yes. But as far as making these characters look incredibly realistic and detailed, and it's like, oh, this is so fun. No. It's so much so it affected the musical numbers where it was uncanny.
Oh my gosh, I know you're going to get to that already. I was so disappointed in Be Our Guest. I really was looking forward to it. I said, oh, they're going to pull out all the stops. This is live action. It's going to be fantastic. And they were more concerned with fireworks and special effects than the performance. And the performance was indicative of the characters themselves. In the animated movie, you cared. You cared about the inanimate objects, not knowing they were human. At least I didn't, because I had never read the book. And when they turned to human, I was surprised at the end of the animated movie because I didn't know. I cared. I cared about the pot and her little cup baby. Yes. I cared about the candelabra. I cared about them all. In this movie, I didn't give a darn about any darn inanimate character they had. I didn't care. Oh they didn't make you care. They were just going through the motions and reading the lines and trying to imitate the movie, but they failed miserably. There was no life in these characters.
Especially, when you get to the end of the movie and it's supposed to have the grand see the transformation and everything, what really sucks about it is that you know how it ends in the other movie, found true love, she helped break the curse, he turns human, da-da-da. But, oh no, we add a little extra. Belle did not technically save the beast, because the rose fell, the curse was set, and he died, and everyone turned into inanimate objects again. And it was like this slow, drawn-out thing where you're saying goodbye because they failed. And it's like, no, she failed, she didn't kiss him, it was over. Then the witch that cursed him in the beginning of the film comes back all this time later and sees, oh, you found true love, I'll fix the rose, and she saves the beast and restores everybody to their human form. So because they say, oh, true love conquers, no it didn't. No, it didn't. She failed.
That's because it wasn't in this movie.
Right, she failed. The witch saved and said, okay, you learned your lesson, I'll restore everything, and that's how we end it.
One thing I do want to mention, we forgot when we mentioned the beast, is that this beast and Dan Stevens' performance was shout out was given in Kipo and the
Age of Wonder Beast. Yes,
with Charlemagne. This was definitely a reference to this movie.
Yeah,
he looked like the beast. He acted like the beast.
Yes, and the beast, one of his old concepts was he looked like a baboon.
Yes, so I thought that was a smart shout out to this movie, a better one than the movie itself.
Right.
And you'll see it on screen. We did think of that when we were watching and going, that was clever.
Yeah.
How can something else be more clever than the movie itself?
Right.
Quickly, I want to go through the cast that performed the inanimate objects, because they're already giving credit to the ones who were the main characters.
Right.
Ewan McGregor is Lumiere. Stanley Tucci is Cadenza. Audra McDonald is Madame de Garderobe. Gugu Mbathu Raw as Plumette. Hattie Marhan as Agatha. Nathan Mack as Chip. Ian McKellen as Cogsworth. And Emma Thompson as Mrs. Potts.
Yes, well, at least you all tried. I won't discredit anybody in here except maybe Emma Watts. They only have to say about the direction was probably so bad they could only reflect what was in the script and the instructions. So unfortunately that came through with just about everybody.
I think the best part of this movie was when you already knew what was going to happen. You already knew the reveal.
Yeah, right, exactly. So at least the ending would be mostly the same.
But the reveal part was the best part.
Yeah.
I think it was when you saw them come alive and you saw the actors that were playing them. That was the part that I thought was the most entertaining. What I did found disturbing was how one of the characters no longer wanted to be with his wife.
Yeah, he wanted to go back to being a clock.
And with a man instead of with the wife he was married to. And I guess someone thought that would be fun.
I think so.
And
comedy.
what took away from was that
He didn't.
in the movie they were just happy to be back human, and that they had a character that was so superficial that all he was concerned with was his happiness and what he wanted to go back to. Not that everyone, including himself, was human again. It kind
He
of
preferred to,
it was kind of like,
he preferred to be a clock rather than see his wife.
and
It was
don't
like
at us and say it was supposed to be a joke. It was a bad joke.
It was, yeah.
and it was a bad joke because, again, it's supposed to be a happy time. Everyone's human again.
Yeah.
Now, if they had waited to after everyone was human again, and maybe toward the end of the movie, he was despondent and upset and would
like,
rather
wait a minute.
she be
furniture
yeah,
object, yeah.
that would have been funny. But not while it was happening.
Right. It's like, okay then.
So the critical response, Rotten Tomatoes before it was rotten, gave it a 71%, 6.7 out of 10. Generally favorable. But before you guys tell us everyone loved it, no, they did not. There were quite a few things that people, or critics or reviewers, I should say, were not pleased with. It got generally favorable reviews, but all of them were not favorable. And again, I think that most of the money was made because people were wanting to see what would they do with a live action remake of an animated film, and because the animated film was so well loved. That is why they made so much on this movie.
Just before we all knew, so.
Right. But a lot of them were saying that it didn't have the magic of the animated film, and I agree, 10 billion%. And some of them were saying that they didn't think the storytelling was as well. And they questioned the change that they saw the beast come and go from in its castle versus a magic mirror. And they said the castle was supposed to be impenetrable. After that, the mythology didn't work for them.
Yeah, the castle, yeah, that was something they added. The castle was falling apart as the curse was getting worse, so it was supposed to, I guess, be destroyed if the curse was set in stone, I guess. And it, I don't know, that was such an odd thing to put in, so it was like, is this a metaphor?
Yeah. Again, they were nominated for quite a few awards. They only won a few. Best Makeup and Hairstyling from the Empire Awards, Costume Design Award and Makeup and Hairstyling Award from Hollywood Film Awards, Best Original Song, Sci-Fi Fantasy Horror Film, that's funny, Hollywood Music and Media Awards, Best Actor, Movie of the Year from the MTV Movie Awards, and that doesn't say anything. The Best Costume Design San Diego Film Critics Award, Best Costume Design Saturn Awards, Choice Movie Fantasy, Fantasy Actress, Villain.
Yeah, fill in the blanks.
And guess where that's from? Teen Choice Awards. They just give out awards for the heck of it.
Pretty much. It's an extra ceremony.
Again, this movie was a success because it was the first of its kind. And as you said, now that we know, people are very trepidatious and not even happy when we hear about live action because in 90% of them, they're terrible. And it seems like the best thing about this movie in terms of the awards being given out, was costume and design. And I did say it was elaborate, it was beautiful, the makeup was garish, but other than that, really care was taken to make it stand out and make it fantastic, and they were successful at that.
Right.
So if you've seen Beauty and the Beast 2017 live action film, let us know what you think in the comments. Did you love it? If so, tell us why.
Right.
If you hate it, tell us why.
Right.
Have you not seen it? Let us know. And if you haven't, we saw it on a DVD from the library. You can go there and get it. It's not available on any streaming service but Disney Plus.
Right.
So that'll be the only way you can get it unless you buy it. And we don't recommend you buy it unless you love it. Then go ahead and buy it.
Right.
But if you haven't seen it, come back and tell us what you think. And lastly, how do you think it compares to the animated version? Point out some things you may have missed and let us know in the comments.
Right. And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates and weekly videos for your anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for joining us today, sharing our videos, commenting, and so much more. As always,
you are special. Thank you so much for watching. Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.